I hope everyone's doing outstanding. October 31st, 2024, 8:58 on this fine Halloween. Happy Halloween, folks. Trick or treat. Uh, have a safe day, what have you. Really quick talk about the markets. Go from there. We'll take a look at the futures in the red this morning. Nasdaq's down about 0.75%. S&P futures are down about 0.67%. And you have small caps are nearly flat. So I guess that's a good silver lining. There's the small caps. But unfortunately, the SPY is under 578, tested 575 at about 5:30 this morning. So if you see you get a bounce, I would love to see a bounce and close over 578 and then setting up nice into tomorrow. Earnings after the close yesterday, right? Microsoft and Meta, some great earnings, great guidance. But then those both the stocks ramp after the earnings, and then they start to look into the numbers and say, wow, they're spending a lot of money on AI and in the cloud. You take a look at Meta. I always try to call it Facebook, but their metaverse, which was supposed to be the next big thing, and maybe it is. I think that's run like 35 billion dollars just in R&D. I mean, crazy. I think it just lost 4 billion last quarter, but that's all like baked in. So despite all that, they still beat and raise. So uh, those are probably bounce candidates. And if you think about all that spend goes somewhere. It's not like it's being spent on. I mean, some of it's just on labor, right? I mean, the R&D part, but then the other's got to be on the hardware side, so components, things like that. So that just bodes well for all those other names in the space, the chip names, the semis, all that stuff. All right. So after the close today, we have Amazon and Apple. Could be another one of those report. Hopefully, we get a little bounce today, and those can kind of set things up for rally tomorrow. If not, I'm still on the cautious side. The VIX is over 21. Yields continue to rise. They bounced yesterday after opening in the red. It's almost like we need resolution from either the election or the Fed next week, and maybe it'll be like the air coming out of a balloon. Finally, it will release all that pressure that's been built up on all these events, all the earnings. The Fed PC data this morning came in line, so it's pretty much like a non-event. So hopefully that all plays out. And then also tomorrow we get the jobs report. I keep forgetting about that too. It's like the last big data piece before the Fed meeting. So hopefully no surprises there, and market can go on its merry way. But take a look at the yields. I mean, from the mid-September, which were the Fed, we're back up near July levels. So just remarkable reversal. All right, so now individual names. So first I'll talk about Fiverr. I did it on my rant yesterday afternoon, but it wasn't a name really I had on the watch list, but I've been watching it into earnings somewhat, and it was running up the day before and the day before that. It was in the 22s and 24s and 25s. I was looking at $30 strikes, and I'm like, they're kind of expensive. The stock was at 24 and change. To think that it's going to rally, 30% or so is pretty, require a monster beat and raise. So what does Fiverr do yesterday morning? They report a decent quarter, like a beat and raise. It's like their normal beat and raise. It seems like every quarter they beat and raise, the stock rallies and then fades. And then yesterday, I don't know if it was because their full year guidance was raised. You could see right out of the gate, it was just buyers nonstop. All the way, but once it broke 29, I went and got some November strikes to play for a move into the 30s. Breaks 30, went all the way up to 33, almost $33 before fading for the rest of the day. Thankfully, able to lock some of my calls in for over 100%. Still have my strikes. I probably won't add anything unless it breaks $30 again. But I've done my rants on this one before. It's a great story, and back in COVID, it was a $300 stock. It's come back substantially with a lot of names that benefit from COVID. But I think they've reinvented their business a little bit to, in the face of AI and the possible competitive concerns. I think it just bodes well. So continue a name that'll be closer on the watch list than it's been over the last couple of weeks. That's Fiverr. Dell. Right at the open, I put it on the watch list that I was going to grab Dell calls at the open because of the super micro news. And then sure enough, the market opens and the Dell option market wasn't open. It took a couple minutes. So I took that off the radar for a second. I was looking at other things. I go back and finally open, but then the stock was selling off. So once it held 126, got the calls, it rallied back over 130. I think it got up near 134, 133.97. And I was able to lock some of my November 15 strikes in for over 100%. I'll continue to hold the rest. I mean, if the market sells off, Dell's going to come under pressure. It just seems like that the name's very sensitive to the market. But if we find some footing, we bounce. I can see Dell trading up near 139 in the coming weeks. I'll continue to hold the rest of my strikes. And then Peloton. So I added some speculative calls. So I was looking at two names this week for earnings. Roku was one. Peloton was the other. So I added the Peloton strikes. I think I tweeted it on the private Twitter in the chat room. Just some speculative calls. Peloton's a name I followed since it's long time ago, especially COVID. I did my rants on, and people look at Peloton and think it's just a bike, right? And it's like, how can this company do so well? What is it? And like, if you don't use the product, don't know someone who's used it, things like that, then you're just not going to understand it. And all these folks used to, I think it was Jim Chanos, all these folks used to come in bearish on the name because they, probably never rode the bike or never do ride bikes. I don't know. But they were, they were wrong because it was $20, ran all the way up into the hundreds and beyond. And then they were right when it came all the way back down. Some of that was the COVID pent up, similar to Fiverr. But I mean, it's a great story. I said it before, like, it's like the content platform uh, for exercise, right? And it's like that's their moat. And a lot of these instructors and stuff, they're like stars on Instagram. They do commercials. They do all. So it's all that. I mean, some of that comes with cost, right? They got to keep the instructors. You have to pay them, but it also keeps a loyal crowd. And I used to tell these stories. The people who use the Peloton, they're crazy. I remember there used to be reports people would hook up a drill to the bike so that they can beat records, right? And be top on top performance in some of these things, right? They would cheat. I mean, that's how crazy some of it is. So, um, looks like earnings this morning, traded one times revenue. It's going to trade much higher revenues now. It's gapping, but uh, finally looks like they're on the path to returning to really solid free cash flow and profitability. They already had high margins. It's a matter of cutting expenses. They're doing that. They raised their earnings guidance, well, their free cash flow and margin guidance into 2025. So just a good sign, despite pretty much saying it's going to be a flat revenue year over year kind of situation. Considering where it's been, and I mean, it's already had 100% bounce, but where it's come from, I think if they're continuing on this turnaround story, they finally appointed a CEO this morning as well. I think this just all bodes well. So there's always been rumors too that Apple might buy them. Apple has part of their Apple Plus package or whatever. They have fitness. Peloton has a content library. So uh, that's some of the moat. Of course, having a bike that was an expensive piece of equipment that almost people would feel you almost feel guilty if you buy the bike, but then don't sign up for this, not a member, right? You don't use it. So it almost forces people to use it. Rants for other days. So I have the November strikes. I put on the watch list. I'll lock some in. There'll be a couple 100% at the open. And then I'll look to get some later strikes possibly into 2025. If this is the start of the turnaround and it's already rallied a lot, it's probably going to trade up near $30 in 2025. So that's Peloton. Roku. So I was mentioned on the rant yesterday afternoon, finally a premium build into earnings. The stock was barely up, and I say barely, it was up 2%, but the contracts, even the far out of money ones, the 95 calls weeklies, the 100 calls weeklies, they're all up 100% plus, with the stock only up 1-2%. So that would have given you an opportunity if you got the calls and then sold them out yesterday to cover costs, and then you could ride some freebie into the event. I didn't do either, thankfully. But you know what? If you had told me the earnings, I would have thought the stock is up, and that's the thing that drives you nuts on Roku. Similar to some of these other names, they had a beat and raise. They posted a profit better than expectations, although it's a loss. And the headlines will say Roku is down because they posted a loss, but the loss was expected, right? And then it's Roku is down because their average user revenue per average user was flat. So they'll just find a metric because they just have to rationalize the move. But I'm not, if it gets 66, I might look for a bounce here. We'll see. It's just I don't. Anyway, so that's Roku. So thankfully I didn't get any of those strikes, and I'll continue eye that one possibly. Travelzoo, solid day yesterday, recouped most of the day before losses, closing up nearly 4%. If it starts green and holds its gains today, I'll look for finally get the December strikes, possibly the 20s, maybe some March strikes, 25s. Again, similar story to Peloton. Well, Travelzoo is not really a turnaround story. It's a return to growth story, as they have a possible catalyst with their membership program coming online at the start of next year. Clear Secure, similar travel name. So up 3 days in a row finally. Maybe this can finally start to break those highs that hit earlier this month. And then I think it's on its way to 40. I think that's about what else we have. A win, flat as a pancake for 5 sessions in a row. They report earnings next week. Not much to talk about there, but if it does get over $100 and holds, I'll look to get some more strikes. VKTX, we have one more day and then obesity week. So, unfortunately, it came under pressure with LLY's earnings yesterday, but then it bounced. It looked like it was going to take off, got into the green, and then reverse course. Probably going to be one of those names I'm just going to hold into the weekend. And then SE, and SE was down again after the previous day's losses. At some point, I'll look for some more strikes to encompass earnings, which are, I believe, they're on the November 12th. So I'll have to go out and get the November 15th. But really like this one for upside. I think that's it, folks. Let's have a great day. I'll be back on audio later. Rock and roll.